So we're going to have a look at a question about the graph of a quadratic function. So it's question 8b from the 2018 Junior Cert Higher Level Paper 1. So we've been told that the solutions of the equation x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0, so x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0, are x equals minus 1 and x equals 2. Now, the first thing we might do before we explore which of the three graphs is represented by the function f of x equals x squared minus x minus 2 is just to solve this quadratic equation for ourselves. So they did give us the solutions to this quadratic, but this is something that we could easily do for ourselves by factorizing the quadratic initially. So we have an x and an x. Two numbers that multiply to give 2 are obviously 2 and 1. And we're trying to make a minus x when we sum the product of the inner and the product of the outer. And so we can see that that's going to be minus 2x plus 1x gives us minus x. So just to double check the quadratic, we have x by x is x squared, minus 2 by plus 1 is minus 2, and then as we said, the product of the inner 2 is minus 2x and the product of the outer 2 is plus x, and minus 2x plus x is minus x. So after we factorize the quadratic, we let each bracket equal 0, so x minus 2 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. The linear equation I've made on the left hand side, x minus 2 equals 0. I'm going to add a 2 to both sides to give me x is equal to 2. And the one on the right hand side, x plus 1 is equal to 0. I'm going to subtract a 1 from both sides to give me x equals minus 1. And so those were the two solutions that we were already presented with. Now, when we have the graph of a quadratic function, we can see it here, f of x equals x squared minus x minus 2. The first thing we check is it a plus x squared function, in which case it's u-shaped, or is it a minus x squared function, in which case it's n-shaped. So we obviously have a plus x squared function, which means it's u-shaped. Now that doesn't narrow down our options. Our options, graph A, graph B, and graph C, they're all u-shaped graphs, and so we knew that that was going to be the case because it was a plus x squared graph. Well, the next thing to check is the solutions or the roots of the quadratic function equal to 0. So the function is x squared minus x minus 2, and obviously if we let that equal 0, we find the roots of that quadratic. We've already done that. We know that they're x equals 2 and x equals minus 1. And the roots of a quadratic function are those values on the curve that cut the x-axis. So we know that they are x equals minus 1 and x equals 2. Well, that means it could be either graph A or graph B, as they both have roots of minus 1 and 2. So we can discount graph C. Graph C has roots of minus 2 and 1, and they aren't the solutions that we were given earlier on. So to finally narrow it down from graph A and B, what we're going to do is we're going to see where this curve cuts the y-axis. So if I write down the function f of x equals x squared minus x minus 2, the term that's independent of x in a quadratic function, so in this case minus 2, that's the value where the curve cuts the y-axis. And so we can see that graph A minus 2 is the value of y where the curve cuts the y-axis. We can see on graph B that it looks like it's the value minus 3. And so the answer to this question is that graph A is the graph of the function f of x equals x squared minus x minus 2. Another way we could have shown that is we could have taken the function f of x equals x squared minus x minus 2, and we know that where a curve cuts the y-axis, the x value is 0. So all along the y-axis we have x values of 0. So if I sub 0 in for x, I get 0 squared minus 0 minus 2. So when the input is 0, the output is minus 2. And so that was just another way to check that that is indeed the value where the curve cuts the y-axis. So let's just summarize those three checks that we made. So the first check was it u-shaped or n-shaped? It was a plus x squared curve, and so it was u-shaped. The second check that we made was we found the solutions, or in this case we were given the solutions to the quadratic equation x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0, which were also the solutions of f of x is equal to 0, and we found them to be x equals 2 and x equals minus 1, and those were the places on the curve that crossed the x-axis. So that narrowed it down to A or B. And then the final check was the term independent of x, or by letting x equals 0 on the function and getting an output of minus 2, well, that's the place where the curve cuts the y-axis, and that was our third check in this question. And again, this all led us to graph A being the graph of the function f of x equals x squared minus x minus 2.